Hello friends and not yet friends, welcome back to Mary's Test Kitchen where we're unlocking the potential of chickpeas. There's a lot to this legendary legume, so I've included timestamps so you can easily go back to each section as you make the recipes for yourself. But you'll want to watch the whole story through, so please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and settle in. I bet you already have some dried chickpeas you can rustle up. Measure out a pound into a very large jar or bowl. If for some reason you don't already have a kitchen scale, well, what are you doing with your life? Let's give them a generous soaking. You want to add so much water that they'll stay submerged even after they triple in size as they sit in the fridge overnight. The next day, drain the water and take a moment to appreciate how thirsty they must have been. Those who know already know chickpeas can tofu, but we're not making the usual chickpea tofu that is commonly seen on YouTube these days. That style of tofu, aka Burmese tofu, uses chickpea flour and water or whole chickpeas blended smooth and cooked until thick. Then it's poured into a container and chilled until it's solid to make a lovely custard-like tofu full of all the goodness of the whole chickpea. All the natural fiber, sugars, starches, and protein in a soft, creamy block. Like polenta, it's solid enough to slice and fry. I used to love making these crispy Burmese tofu dippers. But if you try to boil or braise it, Burmese tofu will dissolve. It's not a flaw, that's a feature, as evidenced by Beryl's recent video on chickpeas featuring Burmese tofu noodles, so it's not really a substitute for soy tofu. Today we're making high-protein, low-carb, bouncy chickpea tofu that can be substituted for regular tofu in most recipes. And we make it with the same method we'd use for making regular soy tofu. As always, look to the pulp to make sure we've gotten the best extraction. The particles should be very fine. If you're seeing chunkier particles, you probably have some of the protein still locked in there and you can reblend it with some water and away you go. Also, the pulp should be as dry as you see here. Still enough moisture to hold together when you squeeze it, but it's easy to crumble too. Let's do the same with the other half of our chickpeas. Of course, we're going to save this pulp, which is mainly fiber, for later in this video because in this economy we cannot afford to waste anything. And behold, this chickpea milk contains the protein, sugar, and starch of the chickpeas. We can't do much about the sugar, but we really don't want starch at our tofu making party. Otherwise, the tofu would become mushy instead of bouncy, as we've seen before in our fava bean tofu episode. Good thing separating the starch doesn't require work at all. Just rest. The starch sinks to the bottom of the bowl. At first there's just a thin layer. After 15 minutes it got a little deeper. After 30 minutes, a little deeper still. And after 45 minutes, well, nothing's changed, so we're ready to move on. You can use this starch just like you would cornstarch for thickening soups or sauces like for stir fries. But this time I'm going to save it for something special that you'll see later in this episode. For now, I'll put it in the fridge because we've got to turn this chickpea milk into high-protein chickpea tofu. Surprise! It's the next day and I have all my items from the previous scene, but chilled. Because between that last shot and this one, I broke my camera lens and I tried to fix it yesterday, but as you can see, I was unsuccessful and it will be 4 to 8 weeks if I send this in to be professionally repaired. So anyways, plug the stove on. We'll just heat this up on medium heat. Continue. Everything is fine. Last time we made chickpea tofu together, we didn't need to add a coagulant. It just coagulated itself upon reaching the boiling point. And it looks like this time, the same thing is happening. However, a few people left me comments after trying this too, and they did end up needing a coagulant. I still don't know why, since I have not been able to reproduce the problem. So if you end up getting to the simmering stage and your chickpea milk doesn't immediately start coagulating, well, you could add a coagulant. I always prefer calcium sulfate because, let's face it, it's the unsung hero of coagulants. It's cheap, tasteless, and always effective. Today, let's see what happens if I add coagulant to this anyway. Never mind that. Our favorite tofu press is ready to receive. Though actually, these chickpea curds are not as big and fluffy as last time. I think maybe the coagulant was not such a good thing. Or maybe these chickpeas were just not as good as the chickpeas from last time. You know, every harvest can be a little different. I learned that from the owner of DSI, which is a local tofu maker here in Calgary, Alberta. He buys only certain beans to make sure his tofu always turns out the best. Now we have this big bowl of leftover whey. It'll have some of the sugars from the chickpea, dissolved minerals, and some vitamins if they've survived the cooking process. Let's give it a taste. It's savory, a little sweet. It's chickpea broth for all your veggie broth needs. Never waste it, my friends. It's gold. Gold that you'll want to use in 3 days or less because that's how long it'll stay food safe in the fridge. Anyways, let's carefully place our hard-earned curds into the tofu press and spread them out as evenly as we can. Add the pressing lid, then twist the top to add pressure. If you want it, you can also just leave it if you want a softer tofu. And we have some more whey to drain off. This goes in the fridge to chill completely, I'd say at least 4 hours. Usually though, I go overnight. But actually, I made this on a Friday morning and I don't like to film on weekends, so on Monday... Well, let's just say more pressing is not always a good thing. Look how squashed my tofu became. It's so small, it's a bit too dry. The combination of the curds being so tiny and then also overpressed, it's not a great thing. Compare it to the fluffy curds from last time, pressed in the same mold with the same pressure but only overnight. It was bouncy. But today's batch is crumbling at the slightest touch. Let that be a lesson learned. I want to learn even more though, so I'm placing 1/2 in the freezer. And the other half? Well, last time our chickpea tofu became even bouncier after boiling it. So this time I'm gonna simmer it and see if that changes the texture. We still have our chickpea pulp to use. This pulp is mostly fiber. Maybe there's a tiny bit of protein and starch in there as well, but I think it's safe to treat as just fiber. The soft, crumbly texture is different from soy pulp left over from making regular soy tofu. It reminds me more of the fluffy texture of coconut flour or almond flour. Regardless, it's still chickpea, so it must be cooked before humans can eat it. We have a lot, and I want to try a couple different things. With 1/2 of the raw chickpea fiber, let's cook it on the stove in a non-stick pan. I'll spread it out evenly and cook it over medium-high heat. As it heats up, the water evaporates, steaming our pulp. The longer it does that, it dries and the fiber is getting a little bit toasty. The aroma is really nice, kind of sweet. Also, the drier parts are falling apart nicely, and you can see where it's more clumpy, that's where the moisture is hiding. Once it feels completely dry, we can turn our toasted chickpea fiber into flour. At this point, I'm asking myself, should we reblend it because of these larger particles or keep them out? When I'm in doubt, I keep it inclusive. And now we have 108 grams of toasted chickpea fiber flour that actually tastes good. It's toasty, it's kind of like toasted oats with a touch of sweetness to it, kind of like coconut flour. Just in case there's any moisture left in there, I'll use a coffee filter for the lid for now. So what can you do with this? Well, we'll get to that in a bit, but first we need to process the other half of the chickpea pulp. Instead of pan toasting, let's do the opposite. That is, instead of removing water, let's add it. Look how thick it gets. So quickly too. It absorbs so much water. This fiber is so thirsty. It reminds me of how psyllium husk and ground flaxseed behave. But is it starting to look like something else we love? My friends, this is totally giving me congee vibes. Having grown up on white rice congee but no longer being able to eat it without painful consequences, this is giving me hope. Let's not get too excited, let's give it a taste test first.
It has the texture of congee, but a little more grittiness, like there's obviously some fiber in there that white congee normally doesn't. Ooh, you know what? Kind of reminds me of the texture of brown rice congee.
With a few adjustments and additions, I really think this might be the start to a great low-carb alternative to rice-based congee. I don't mind telling you, I'm pretty stoked on the possibilities. But for now, it's going in the fridge. I want to see if it will solidify the way Burmese tofu does, because it kind of acts like it. So yeah, into the fridge. Speaking of the fridge, I got the starch out of there. Remember this chickpea starch from way earlier? Let's pour off the water from the top and see how much chickpea starch we really have. Let's just say we have 100 grams of starch, then add 100 grams of cold water and stir that up. Then in our pot, separately, I'll pour in 300 grams of hot water. Hot just to speed things up, because we want this water to boil before stirring up the starch slurry again, turning the heat down to medium, and then stirring in the slurry. This allows the starch to incorporate completely and cook quickly. It's very opaque white at first, but quickly it takes on a more translucent and glossy quality. It gets super thick fast, so keep stirring for about 2 minutes. Then you can pour it into a heat-safe container. You'll notice that the cooked chickpea starch sets up very quickly. It's only been a few seconds and the leftovers in the pot can be peeled away. The spatula already has a preview of our noodles on them. Just wait until the container is cooled a little before popping on a lid and then chill this completely in the fridge. Afterwards, we can pop out the block.
$412.
Did you already know what's coming? Of course you did. We're making noodles. Cut with a knife? Well, it's difficult to make them thin and even. Cut with a vegetable peeler. It's much easier. Give it a taste. The texture is like cold, fresh rice noodles. Tastes like it too. Firm, but not quite ready to eat. I mean, there are no rules, so you could, it's safe, but not how I would recommend it really. Just wait and see. Recently, Hot Thai Kitchen did an episode making mung bean starch noodles, and she used a box grater to cut noodles from her block of cooked starch. I don't have one handy, but I do have this thing. I'll put the noodles in cold water for now to keep them from sticking. These are pretty good, but a little rough. I have one other grater to try, a bit of a different shape. These thinner noodles are just so pretty looking. But noodles aren't for looks, they're for eating. So I've got a non-stick pan, and the noodles, after draining, can go in directly. They soak up any flavors you add. As soon as they warm up, starch noodles become soft and pliable. If you've ever had mung bean vermicelli or fresh Cantonese-style rice noodles, you'll know what I'm talking about. But they are delicate, so don't handle them too much, otherwise they will break. And in minutes, they're ready. I'll just have one bite for quality control. My friends, they are so tender and so delicious. Absolutely stunning, especially for an ingredient that I usually use as a sauce thickener. If you are not a starch avoider, you absolutely need to try this. And they're so good. I just have to have one more bite before I pass the rest to my boyfriend, because if I eat more, I will have painful consequences because of my own personal health conditions. You will probably be fine, most likely. Anyways, I have more work to do. Let's see what our chilled boiled chickpea fiber got up to. It seems solid. It looks a lot like our chilled starch block did. Maybe we can make noodles? It appears appearances are deceiving. I guess it is destined to become congee or to help stews and soups get thicker. Not all fiber can be noodles. But this toasted chickpea fiber is going to become something even better. Bread. But first, let's see what our frozen chickpea tofu turned into. Remember, one half was frozen as is, right out of the tofu press. The other was boiled first, then frozen. And now they are both thawed. Quite crumbly. Oh, falls apart easily. So, lesson learned. Freezing is not always beneficial to tofu. At least overpressed tofu made from very fine curds are not enhanced by freezing. Any ideas on how you would use these very fine crumbles? Let me know in the comments below. Speaking of comments, one request that I got from you guys was to make a white bread version of my now famous vegan keto bread rolls. Maybe we can even do 2 requests in one. And with this lovely aromatic chickpea fiber, plus taking the lessons we've learned from how chickpea fiber behaves, I think it can be done. I'm basically taking my original vegan keto bread recipe, replacing 2 of the ingredients with the toasted chickpea fiber flour, and sizing it all down to fit the amount of fiber we actually have.
Oh, that's much too dry. I'm gonna add a little water.
I'll add just a little bit at a time, knead it in, and repeat until we get the dough texture that is similar to our original recipe. By the way, I will add up everything and type up the recipe for you, so in case you do try this, well, you'll have everything printable from marystestkitchen.com. It's very tough, very bouncy. Next time, I think I'll grind the fiber flour even finer and sift out the larger particles because some of it is coming out of the dough as we go, which is not ideal. Other than that, though, it's really coming together. It's looking so good. So I'll let this rest for 15 minutes to let the gluten relax, and then we can shape buns.
Oh, that's soft. Okay. 468. So
these dough balls are looking a little rough, but the gluten is getting tough, so before I keep kneading it, it needs a rest. So I'm going to cover this for 15 minutes.
it's been 15 minutes. Let's see. Let's see if I can't just... Oh yeah, that's much smoother now.
It's so much easier to knead them. I want the top part smooth with surface tension so our buns will look a little less rustic. For a nice tall burger bun shape, I'm going to use these mini springform pans. You may have seen them before when I made Heavenly Fan's vegan keto carrot cake. And I really like them. In case you really like them too and you want to get yourself a set, I will put the affiliate link down in the description along with any other equipments or materials I recommend. I only have 2 clean though, so these 2 buns will have to rise on their own merits. Let's cover them all and let them rise for 75 minutes. When the resting time is almost up, preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Then after the rising time, the buns should be between doubled and tripled in size, but no larger. Let's put them in the hot oven for 25 minutes. Afterwards, don't they look beautiful? I am so excited to get into them, but they have to cool down. By the time they do, my natural light has left, which is why the lighting is so different. But look at this squish! Look at this spring! Let's look inside. This is amazing. The texture is just like regular bread. It's not perfect though, I have to say. It is a little bit on the dry side, so I think we just need a fat source, which it's not too late to add, and I did add the next day, in the form of roasted garlic olive oil. And since these are burger buns, let's make burgers. My friends, this is so good. I wish you could taste it for yourself. With all the burger fixings, especially with the added moisture from the tomato, I swear you could not tell that this is a high protein, high fiber, low carb bun. Anyways, I'm going to take this basic recipe and see if I can make it better so that the buns are good just by themselves. But for now, I still recommend making this. Chickpeas really can be anything. Anything else you'd like to see with chickpeas or other legumes, seeds, or nuts? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this extra long chickpeas celebration. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, share it with a fellow chickpea lover, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me, what is the best thing you have ever made with chickpeas thus far? Thanks for watching. Bye for now.